Most of the societal pressures when we talk about masculinity, they come from we're supposed to be doing these things for other people. And my thing is why? It's like, well, I want my partner to have a good life. I want my partner not to worry about this. I want to make sure that I'm able to pay the bills. I want to make sure my kids can go to a good school and things like that. And it's like, well, why do you do that? School is school. As long as you pay the bills, it's like why what's the point of why do you have to show up emotionally? She's saying, oh, okay, yeah, we're doing this, but we haven't gone out on a date. It's like why do you think those things are important? And I think when we get to the root of some of these things, like because we love people, because we care about people, because we want them to be happy and they make us happy. And sometimes, bro, I know it seems really simple, but sometimes we forget why we do certain things.
Austin Graves, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, bro. How are you?
Man, hanging in there. I find too often we don't necessarily hear how us men get into this space. And I think it'd be helpful for anybody out there who looks like us and is male thinking about this field of, learning about how you got into this space.
It definitely was a journey. I'm a non-traditional student. I didn't go into the field right after graduation. So I graduated from Morehouse in 2015. And during that time, as I'm sure most people their senior year, what do I do next? Right. And for me, I was like, well, I thought about originally doing clinical psychology, had done an internship. Bro, I hated it. I was like, this doesn't feel I always had more of an interest in people and the therapeutic side. And research, I think, has its place, but it has to be the right subject, right? If you're not interested in what you're researching, then it's kind of hard. And there was nobody really at that time doing the things that I wanted to do. I was really interested in Black identity and masculinity and some of the things that we've talked about prior. But ultimately, as far as the next step, I'm like, bro, I have no clue what I want to do. And so I met Dr. Kate Warner from VSU, Valdosta State University, and she just had an aura about her, like just super sweet, super kind. As I had kind of interviewed for other institutions, it was more about, what a privilege and honor it was to be in those spaces, as we talk about academia and the privilege and the cachet. And it's like, this is such a great opportunity. You should be grateful that we're, really even viewing you as an applicant type of deal. And so nothing really felt like the right fit. So I ended up just going back home, working, spent some time in education, teaching, doing different things. Ended up doing sales, tech sales for a while. And bro, I was just kind of burnt out. I wasn't making the connections with people that I wanted to make. I really wasn't doing anything related to my psychology degree. And so, bro, I was just kind of spent. And one of my best friends, she just kind of pulled me aside and was like, why don't you go back to school and do therapy? Like, why are we playing about this? Because it's always something that I kind of spoke about passionately that I wanted to do. But I think just at the time when I was looking at jobs in the space, we're talking about people making 40 and $50,000 a year. And most of it was community mental health and agency. So it just, for me, I was looking at the job market in that landscape, like, I just paid all this money for this degree. I, I want to make some money, man. So I ran from therapy. I ran from my purpose for a long time. And I think as far as, our experience being in our 30s, like I don't regret it. You know what I mean? There are times where I wish, man, I wish I'd gotten to this sooner because I'd be in private practice. I'd be further along in my career. But I think the experiences that we've had in some of our other occupations, they're really invaluable. And just that life experience in general has really helped me to make those connections with clients and be more effective as a therapist. But I'm excited to be doing, what I really feel like I was meant to do and operating with a passion and a purpose. And we see it in real time. We see that connection with clients. We see the aha moments. We see them become empowered and truly be able to foster change in their own lives. And, that's the best feeling in the world. So it can be exhausting, but it's extremely rewarding as well. So it's just kind of taking the rough with the smooth and, just making it happen. But, I love what I'm doing, and I can genuinely say that for the first time. So it's been a journey, but no regrets so far. We're where we're supposed to be.
Yeah, I feel like I learned something new about you every time I talk to you. And I think we originally met, I think it was last year at a
Hmm.
at a conference, and it was just kind of like your aura and the energy that you had. I could tell like you're gonna do big things. And even before we were online, I was like, bro, you got a powerful voice. And so thinking about how some of your past experiences have impacted and influenced you, you made
Hmm.
a good point with how you're able to relate maybe a little bit, not necessarily better, but you can relate more. You've got more life experience to be able to bring in some of your experiences to connect
Hmm.
with clients. And how has that experience been, as we talk about Black men's mental health? How has that experience been for you to, be on the other side working in a completely different field? Did you hear more stigma as far as Black men coming to therapy versus now?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I think there's always been a stigma in mental health, kind of coming from my background, growing up in the Bay Area. My mother is Caribbean. You just don't hear much about Black people going to therapy, especially Black men, because it's like, well, what's wrong with you? You got a problem? Like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Go for a walk. And it's like we see it manifest in all these other ways, whether, it's kind of like the substance abuse route, or we see some of our brothers go, down this route where you messing with a whole bunch of women and you got a whole bunch of kids and doing this thing, just trying to find something to kind of sate that empty feeling. And we try everything else before we just talk about it, before we become expressive and like, hey, I need help, or have you gone through similar things? And that's just something, getting older, that I've had to learn to do, is be more expressive with my loved ones and my family and my friends, and letting them know when I'm burnt out, and, when I'm struggling with something. And so just kind of coming from that experience, that's really effective for me as a clinician, is meeting people where they're at. And not so much like, yo, man, you need to talk about this. Let it go, brother. Let it, it's more along the lines of, tell me what's going on. And that process has to be as slow as it needs to be. I think the biggest misconception that I had with therapy is that therapy was something that we do, that I have to go in and I have to say something profound, or I have to provide, some type of worksheet or treatment plan that, helps them change immediately. And change happens when it's supposed to. And I think that can be a very slow, methodical process. And that's not often what we see on TV when we see therapy. It's, you need to be more expressive. It's more of kind of the more coaching type of thing. And it's like that has its place from an entertainment standpoint. But when we talk about what we actually do, it's really putting the client at the center. And that's really being patient as far as meeting them where they're at, because they are coming in with that stigma. They are coming with these preconceived notions that therapy doesn't work. And if I could just talk about it, you know what I mean? I'd have been did it, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with these things. Kind of just being patient and talking about, okay, what's going on in your daily life? Like, work has been challenging. This is going on. And it's like, well, you said you enjoy your job, but what is it? It's like, I feel like I'm not providing enough. I feel like, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing as a man. And then you see those things kind of manifest, and then you become more expressive. But I think just outwardly, like, hey, why don't you talk about your feelings? It feels combative. It feels, almost like we're challenging their masculinity in a way. And I think there's enough demands, especially when it comes to Black men, of all the different things that people kind of want and expect from us. So to put them at the center and be like, bro, we could talk about whatever. We could talk about the Boston Celtics. We did it. We could talk about whatever you want to talk about. Because I think giving a space for Black men to be heard is invaluable. Because when was the last time somebody said, hey, bro, how's it going? How are you doing? And they really meant it. You know, they
Hmm.
really cared about what your response was going to be. Most of the time we say those things in passing, and your response better be, I'm fine. Because it's like, bro, we just don't have the time to be able to invest in the ways that we want to. So I've gotten used to being like, I'm straight, like I'm good, bro, I got it. But to have somebody truly care about you and pull you aside, hey, what's going on for you? What's that like? What's your world like? And truly be curious about your journey and the inner workings of that. I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing about therapy. And I think for Black men, that's what surprised them. Like, oh, this is about me. It's like, yeah, brother, it's about you. And for some people, that might be the first, the first time in their life they've really felt considered. And so I think that's the beauty of what we do and having the experiences that we do of like, yeah, sometimes I feel unheard and sometimes, I feel like I'm not acknowledged. So I really want to make sure I'm thoughtful in creating that space for others.
There's a piece as far as like I want to highlight actually being able to express ourselves. And I
Hmm.
think in our society, we are often taught that we aren't supposed to feel
Hmm.
and we aren't supposed to express. And our expression to people outside of our community is, oh, well, he's the angry Black guy. And it's just
Hmm.
like, yo, I'm just keeping it real. Like I'm just
Hmm.
asking questions, I'm just doing this. And then the other piece of that is sometimes it's just listening. We don't want a
Hmm.
solution. We just want somebody to hear what it
Right.
means, what it feels like to be a Black male in our
Hmm.
country.
Hmm.
And that goes into my next question because I think there are different things that we experience that some people just don't even know. And so,
Hmm.
can you explain how cultural and societal factors contribute to the unique ways Black men experience anxiety and depression?
I do want to say, firstly, it's like Blackness is not a monolith. So I think even giving the space for these things to look different for men in our community, like some men, they may be angry, right? And, often my thing is, so what if you are? Like, what's wrong with that? I just feel out of control. I feel, and it's like, then we kind of open it up where we talk about anger, we talk about fear, we can talk about anxiety, we can talk about depression, because I think before we even get there, oftentimes we're suppressing those small emotions. We're suppressing the anger. We're suppressing the sadness. And, when you can't be expressive, when you literally are preventing yourself from feeling, you become emotionally unavailable. You become emotionally void. And that empty feeling is what leads to the anxiousness, what leads to the depression. Because imagine going through life and it's like it doesn't matter. Like it's your kid's birthday and you feel like you can't muster the emotion to smile because you have so much burden, you have so much stress, there's so many things going on that it's like you can't, you feel like you can't feel. And I think that's something that I run into a lot, especially as it pertains to depression, is that it's just like, yeah, bro, I used to be in the music, I used to be in the sports. And essentially, like what they're speaking about, it's like, I used to have hope. I used to have things that I looked forward to. I used to have a safe space. I used to have hobbies. And those things no longer bring me joy. Those things no longer bring me excitement, and they're on autopilot. And I think, that's something that we see for a lot of men, especially for Black men, is just like, bro, I'm just going through the motions. It's almost laughable, bro. How you doing, man? I'm just hanging in there, bro. I'm just pushing along. And so like getting back to those things, like, well, why did that make you happy? And sometimes it's not even the activity, but again, it's centering themselves. Like, oh, well, I just got to, I had a client who was like, yeah, I like making beats. I'm not trying to be a rapper. I'm not trying to, do anything with it. I just enjoy the process. And I'm like, well, what changed? And it's like, well, I have a family now, and I'm married now, and so those things, in a way, it's like, yeah, those things feel childish. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? Well, I'm supposed to be a man now. I'm supposed to be honoring my responsibilities. And I'm like, yeah, but joy, in a sense, the best joy is almost, it has to be childlike. You know what I mean? I remember the first time like picking up a basketball, I'm like, oh, this is cool. You know what I mean? Like this is everything it needs to be, or playing video games or whatever. It's like, look, man, forget what social media says. It's okay to make music and play video games and do some of these things as long as you aren't kind of jerking your responsibilities. If you're doing everything you're supposed to, it's like, why do you feel guilty about taking time for yourself? I think that's one of the things, for me with, kind of struggling with anxiety and things like that is like, well, how do you practice self-care? And it's a simple question, bro. It's like, what do you do for yourself? I was stunned. I was in one of these classes, one of my professors, and she was like, no, how do you practice self-care? And I'm like, I don't. I do my homework, I do what I need to do, I'm working, I'm trying to just make it through. And that attitude, how can we do anything of quality if we're spread thin in that way? There's no way if I'm not taking care of myself, I can then go in the room and one, tell other people to. to practice self-care and mindfulness and those things, but also be truly effective as far as how I'm engaging with them. Because if I'm not right and my energy is not right, it's like, how can I truly be thoughtful if there are things that are distracting me, if there are things causing me to be more withdrawn in session? And I think that's something that we don't talk enough about as therapists, is that self-care is equally important for us if we're going to try to reach out to clients and tell them like, hey, you got to prioritize yourself. You got to be able to be more expressive if we ourselves aren't doing it. And I think that goes back to those experiences. Is like, yeah, I know what that's like. And so if I know what that's like, I kind of have to walk it and live it. And I think that makes you that much better of a clinician when you can take those experiences and not really use it to give, oh, this was, people don't respond well to that. Yeah, man, when I was going through that, this is what I did. But it's like, again, what engages you? What has changed in your life? Because I think the biggest thing when we talk about depression, especially, you don't even notice, bro. You don't even notice you're in it. We just kind of put it under the guise of like, yeah, I'm just going through the motions. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. To where I don't like to put that language out there with clients. But if they're saying things like, yeah, man, I just feel burnt out. Like, I was going to the gym, man. I was doing well. I haven't been to the gym in 2 months. You know what I mean? How's your sleep? I really haven't been sleeping. What's been going on? Bro, this is going on. My mom's sick. You know what I mean? I just lost my job. Like, whatever it is, it's like, okay, this has got you bogged down. You know what I mean? And DSM definition is like anything more than 2 weeks is classified as depression. And we're in the spaces where we're talking about 2, 3 months of just feeling emotionally void and going through the motions, and feeling, stressed. Like, yeah, man, I just feel like there's a weight on my back. And like coming here and talking to you, I didn't think it would help. I didn't think talking about it would help because oftentimes as men, again, we so solution based. You know what I mean? I've had to learn to ask that. You want a solution or are you trying to vent? You know what I mean? What are we doing? So, I think it can impact everybody differently. I feel like I can just say from my own experience, right? I feel like sometimes as Black men, we can be a little more withdrawn when it comes to being expressive because of some of the factors that we talked about, before, kind of talking about like race and prejudice. And, it's like we talk about incarceration rates and unemployment rates. Like, it can be hard to just kind of get your footing. And sometimes, even when you're trying to do the right thing, you can be met with so much resistance that you either give up or you become jaded just so you can kind of fight through the storm and keep pushing on. And so it's like creating a space where it's just like, bro, tell me what's going on. We don't have to call it depression. We don't have to call it anxiety. We don't have to call it toxic masculinity. We don't have to do anything like that here. I just want to know what's going on with you. Let's just have a conversation. And I feel like that feels so less daunting than, hey, man, therapy, you need to be talking about yourself and breaking down strongholds and generational curses. And you need to be able to show up for them kids and the women in your life or, your partner, or whatever the case may be. But, it's like really trying to get to know people and meeting them where they're at. And I feel like that in itself, that connection, because I never want to feel like we're in here curing depression or anxiety when we're in session, right? But just being able to manage it through connection. And it's like, if they can feel connected in that hour session, what else can they do with that, with that encouragement, with that momentum? Because we've all seen it. Clients leave session, with a battery in their back, ready to conquer the world. And it's just like, okay, let's just try to get to Friday. Let's try to get through the week because I don't want you to be discouraged if some of these things don't happen, because it's okay if you still feel depressed. It's okay if you're still, kind of struggling to eat and sleep and some of these other things that we're like, bro, it's just simple. Why couldn't I get up? I had a client like, yeah, man, like, it was hard to get up and shower. And I'm like, what ended up happening, it's like, yeah, bro, I laid in bed for 3 hours and then, I got up and, I washed my ass and brushed my teeth. And I'm like, bro, that's a win. You know what I mean? And for me, like, nah, bro, he didn't even want to claim it. But I'm just like, hey, you didn't have to. You could have laid there for another 3 hours, another 4 hours. So, slowly building that confidence. But I think just fostering that connection and, trying to get them back to, it's like, well, I understand that your daughter was born and you weren't able to go to the gym or make beats or, do a podcast or whatever the case may be. But, it sounds like you gave those things up because you wanted to prioritize, her well-being and her quality of life. How much do you love your daughter? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
they're like, oh, I was feeling like, I did these things because I had to, but it's like, no, I made a choice to because I do love my daughter. And it's like, well, do you think your daughter wants you to be happy? If you're kind of, if you're sitting here and you're upset and you're irritable and things like that, it's like, you don't think she notices that? You don't think that has an impact on your wife or your partner? You don't think your loved ones notice when you have a hard time, when you're angry, when you're short with them? But you tell me you're doing this for them and that you love them. It's like by taking care of yourself, again, the same thing as a clinician, by taking care of yourself, you're able to give more,
Hmm.
you know? But if we don't let people in, they can't help us. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I see with Black men, especially, is that instead of talking about it and kind of telling and teaching people how to love us and support us, we go in the tank, we withdraw, and that's, shrinking, bro, that's always going to make you feel small, man.
There was, man, you said so much, so many gems in there, but I want to take us back to highlight just the kudos I give you for even just like talking about your own experiences of like, hey, like this anxiety. And
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned something in there and it made me think like dealing with anxiety and depression can sometimes be normal. It can be
Yeah.
situational,
Yeah.
but dealing with those things where it's debilitating every single day is not normal. And being able to help clients reconnect with themselves, the attachment that they
Mm-hmm.
have with themselves, so they can speak about, oh yeah, this anxiety I'm feeling, oh yeah, my stomach, it gives me, like, I tell folks, oh, you know what it feels like to go on a first date, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like jittery.
Mm-hmm.
And the other piece is like, what does self-care look like, is one of the biggest questions for us men. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, like, I never really knew what that was. I would work out, do my little
Mm-hmm.
hobbies, but I didn't really know what self-care looked like. Getting the right amount
Mm-hmm.
of sleep, being
Mm-hmm.
hydrated, but I didn't know the self-care from like the standpoint of like the attachment I had with myself. And so
Yeah.
for so long I was in denial about anxiety. I can't tell you how many people I'd be like, oh yeah, I could only imagine what somebody going through anxiety is. And I was just like so damn anxious. And just recently, in the past like 6 months, just acknowledging that I experienced depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's so much power in that, because once you know what it is, it gives you a little bit of control of how you can interact and deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you said another powerful piece in there is, we so often go into our shell or isolate
Yeah.
from other people. But there's a lot of research that says, the attachments that we have, the relationships that we have, are a part of our mental well-being and our
Mm-hmm.
self-care.
Mm-hmm.
There's to kind of talk more about the depression. I pulled something up. It's from Patrice Douglas, and it's an infographic here. And part of it says at least 7% of Black men will experience depression in their lifetime. And I think it's important to highlight some of the symptoms or some of the outcomes of depression. So that can look
Mm-hmm.
like, one of the big ones, sexual dysfunction. And, as far
Mm-hmm.
as men being prideful, it's like, dang, my thing's not working. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it sends you down into this spiral. So that's one of them. Suicidal thoughts. I'm reading here,
Mm-hmm.
men are 4 times likely to die by suicide, and 7 to 8 Black men die daily from death by suicide.
Mm.
So when we isolate ourselves, nobody knows what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
And if nobody knows, how can other people help? And so the power of you, like you said, being able to open up the space, and you were like, we don't even have to call it anything. You're just like,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on, man? We don't have to name it anxiety. We don't have to name it
Mm-hmm.
depression. Just what's going on for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's rare. sometimes because we're put in positions to where we have to be the rock, we have to be the caretaker, we have to be the financial provider, we got to be the dad, we got to be all of these things. And at the end of the day, it's like, who's actually checking in on us to make sure that we're doing okay? And so
Hmm.
many men. That's why I appreciate you putting together our little support group. We meet once a month, and it's all Black men that are clinicians. Just tap in with each other. Hey, what's going on? How you all doing? And we just talk about things.
Hmm.
So kind of transitioning from that, I think it would be helpful for viewers and listeners to hear about like, how do you approach the stigma surrounding mental health within the Black community,
Hmm.
particularly among Black men, and encouraging us to seek therapy.
Yeah, I think that goes into that first intake session, right? What have you heard about therapy? What are some of those reservations, or what are some of those wins that you've heard for other people? Because there is some, that first day people come in, like there is something that draws you in. And sometimes it's, oh, well, my friend came here and they said that, I had some things I needed to work on, or, I'm here because I'm court ordered, right? When we talk about mandated clients, but I'm just here to do my time, man. I'm not trying to talk about nothing deep. I'm not trying to, do all that stuff. And again, right, like meeting them where they're at. I understand the stigma because there's a lot of shame when we talk about mental health, right? Like if you're depressed, you know what I mean? People automatically assume, that, oh, you struggling, you got too much going on. I think the people that care about us deeply, they may try to embrace you for a time, but I think oftentimes, like if someone's not willing to seek support, we like, man, just leave them alone, let them do it. And, I think that's the biggest thing, is that a lot of these people are suffering in silence because of that shame and because of the stigma. And, it's not, this isn't something that just goes with mental health, but it's like, I think this is something a lot of men struggle with. It's just asking for help, right? Asking for support. Because, just kind of, we talk about those societal standards. That's not something that, we're kind of taught that we're supposed to do. We're taught that, like, you're supposed to know, you're supposed to be the man, you're supposed to be in charge, you're supposed to lead, right?
Curious, what would it look like if somebody, as a Black man,
Hmm.
what would it look like if we were to ask for help? Because I think that's the other piece of this as well, is people
Hmm.
say, well, I didn't know he needed help, he never told me. So, and I find that far too often is like, oh, he didn't tell me what was going on. So are there things that you've seen where men ask for help but it just looks completely different, or it's not something that's explicitly said like, I need help?
I think it depends on the relationship. I think when it comes to certain things, like, I have a friend that works on cars, and it's just, oh, bro, do you know, ooh, like I'm hearing this and things like that. But I think when it comes to ourselves, right, when it comes to mental health, especially, I think it becomes harder because it is a vulnerable space to be like, yeah, man, I've had trouble sleeping and eating, and you know what I mean, some of the other things that you've talked about, like just feeling that burden and feeling that weight of anxiety or depression. Like, I need help. Like, how do you go about that? Because one, if we're being honest, you can't talk to most people about those things, or I would not advise that you talk to to just anybody. Make sure it's a person that you trust and someone that you can be vulnerable with. Because I think that's one of the biggest things that I hear, is that it's like, oh, I talked to my best friend about it, and he was like, well, let's go drinking tonight, or you know what I mean, let's go do something else besides talking about it, because I think it can make some men uncomfortable. Like it's like, yeah, bro, I just been feeling down, bro. I don't know what's going on with me. Oh man, you know how it is, man. You'll be all right. You know what I mean? Keep your head up, stay encouraged. So I think one, really considering who you're seeking support from, and if it is a friend or a partner, sometimes asking them if they have the bandwidth, like, hey, I've had some things going on, I know you may have some things going on too, but I just, I want to talk about what's kind of been on my mind, if you have the time. And I think even asking for that space, you'd be surprised at the reactions that you get. Because person might say, "Oh, well, I can't do that today, but let's talk on Thursday. Let's talk on Wednesday." Like, I can't do it right now, but people that care about you will create space for you. And I think sometimes people have to mentally prepare. It's because one, we oftentimes don't know what other people are going through, but just being able to mentally prepare to hold space for you, to hold space for another person, because nobody asks us as therapists, "Hey, is it okay if I tell you this?" Bro, that first session, they throw everything. Okay, okay, all right, let's slow down. I'm hearing, this one particular thing, right? Like, tell me about that. Because I think that's what can feel so overwhelming for them, is that they're like, I have all these different things going on in my life, with work, with relationships, with faith, with health, with family. So it's just like, when you're thinking that you have to have a solution for each of these extremely unique and complex problems tomorrow, bro, I may not get out of bed either. Like, nah, I'm tapped out. I'm tapped out. So I think slowly kind of negotiating these things, and, asking people if you can talk to them about it. Because sometimes somebody might say, "Oh man, I don't really," but, I have a friend, or, I have a pastor, or I have a therapist that I talk to that I think would be a good fit for you. But I think, again, it's just being vulnerable to even kind of say, "Hey, can I talk to you? Can you hear me right now? Can you make space for me?" I don't hear many men speak in that way, but I think just kind of as far as setting it up, in any relationship that you may have, is kind of extending that space to them first. Because I think, again, it's like we talked about before, how often do we truly ask people, "Hey, how are you doing?" And we really mean it.
And even in those situations, I'm just kind of thinking about, why do we do that? And
Hmm.
you mentioned that point earlier. Most people don't know how to take on, if I go and, I'm feeling depressed today, man, or I'm just feeling real anxious about, this job interview. You'd be okay. You do some push-ups. It's like,
Yep.
bro, there's so much, because we also have to think of us Black men. Everything in our lives has been, for the most part, performative. How we show
Hmm.
up in the classroom, how we show up on the field, and just how we show up as a man. And if we don't show
Hmm.
up as a man, we're not doing our duty within our society. And that's the difficult part, but I like how you worded it, as just far as like, do you need advice, or do you need me to hear you? And I
Mm,
think that's one of the biggest pieces that people can take, is when somebody's coming to you, like, the question would be like, how do you open up space for somebody? And if
yeah.
somebody's saying something like, you know what, like, I just haven't been able to sleep lately. All right, bro, like, is there anything that, can I help? Do you just want me to listen? Do you wait,
Hmm.
how can I be of help?
Hmm.
Or if you see somebody who is, I'm reading off of this thing again, is from Patrice Douglas. What happens if we have a friend who is lacking desire from hobbies that they have, or
Yeah.
we notice that they're feeling a little bit more exhausted, or just a little bit more on edge? It's like, hey man, hey bro, like, I've been noticing things have been kind of shaky. Is there anything that I can help? Is it,
Hmm.
how can I be of assistance to you? Do you have like any other phrases? Because I think that is the thing, is like giving people the language to actually
Hmm.
open up space. So are there any other ways that men can use specific language to open up space for somebody?
I know with just language in general, I do try to stay away from, like, yeah, like the general phrases and stuff like that. But truly, it's like, well, what feels comfortable for you, and kind of taking that strength based approach, where it's like, when's the last time you asked for help? And I'll be honest, bro, that's hilarious, especially for Black men. Like, when was the last time you asked somebody for help? And that long pause, like, well, damn, bro, uh, and it's like, well, like 4 months ago, I asked my friend to help me move. And I'm like, okay, we got something. It's like, what was that like? I was like, hey man, I'm moving today. I'd appreciate if you stop by. It's no pressure. But I appreciate the help and we can go grab food or something like that. You know what I mean? But I'm like, so if you did need help, what's the difference about it? What's the difference between, hey man, I'm going through it. I don't know if you have any time or day, but we haven't rapped in a while. Just like to catch up with you. I got some things going on, like to get some perspective from you. You know what I mean? Even if you don't feel comfortable, again, labeling depression or anxiety or I'm saying I'm having a tough time, but even extending the olive branch in that sense, like, hey man, what's going on? Like, I want to catch up with you. And I think again, creating that space for another person, make people feel good. Oh yeah, man. Like, I'm about to go to the gym. I'm about to go to a game. Because I think that can kind of break up the monotony and break up, those routines that are kind of preserving this depression or this anxious feeling to where I will go out on a limb and I'm like, connection to me, in my opinion, is always the answer. Like if you're not connecting with people, it's very hard to connect with hobbies, to connect with jobs and things like that. Because why do we do these things? You know what I mean? Like most of the societal pressures when we talk about masculinity, they come from we're supposed to be doing these things for other people. And my thing is why? It's like, well, I want my partner to have a good life. I want my partner not to worry about this. I want to make sure that I'm able to pay the bills. I want to make sure my kids can go to a good school and things like that. And it's like, well, why do you do that? School is school. As long as you pay the bills, it's like what's the point of why do you have to show up emotionally? She's saying, oh, okay, yeah, we're doing this, but we haven't gone out on a date. It's like, why do you think those things are important? And I think when we get to the root of some of these things, like because we love people, because we care about people, because we want them to be happy and they make us happy. And sometimes, bro, I know it seems really simple, but sometimes we forget why we do certain things. And so it's like, I hate this job. It's like, well, why do you do the job? It's like, well, I gotta pay bills. Well, you don't have to. We could quit the job and be homeless or go couch surfing and things like that. Why aren't those things options? And then it's like, well, no, I couldn't do that to my family. Or it's like, well, myself as a man, I wouldn't feel like I was handling my responsibilities. I wouldn't feel like a man if I was homeless. I wouldn't feel like a man if I was couch surfing. I would feel shame and I would feel guilt. And it's like, well, you came in and you told me you don't feel emotionally expressive. You told me you just feel angry, you just feel sad. It's like, so you're experiencing shame, you're experiencing guilt. You know what I mean? You have these desires to have a purpose in your life. That sounds like hope. To me, you sound hopeful. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, watching the wheels turn, but it's like sometimes we forget because life can be really complex. And it's like slowing down again. It's not detracting from the severity of the situation, but it's like we can deal with things if we're able to make them simpler, if we're able to just slow down and it's like, okay, first things first, step by step, as opposed to again trying to tackle all these different things and you don't even know why you're doing it. You've lost sight of your motivation, which is why we put ourselves in these complicated situations that don't necessarily benefit us. And it's like, well, we may not be able to control you getting a new job, but can we reframe and give you new perspective as to why you do it? Right. And that's when we talk about that self care and that mindfulness, right? That positive affirmation. I am a provider. I am a loving father. I am a loving husband. I am a loving son, a loving brother. You know what I mean? Just kind of saying those things out loud. And this is why I do it. Just changing that perspective is that it's like, I do it because I love these people and they love me, and taking that time. It's like, yeah, but how can we make sure that you're loving yourself in this process? Because you got a lot of weight on your shoulders. And that weight may not go anywhere, but it's like, how can we change how you relate to your responsibilities, how you relate to stress, how you relate to anxiety and depression? Because I've never taken away anybody's depression. I've never taken away anybody's anxiety. I'm not magic. I'm not a wizard. I'm not a pastor. Hey, Shonda, I'm not. It don't work like that, bro. It's like I'm just here to help you maybe relate to it different and manage these things a bit better. And I think just having that realistic perspective as a clinician and like, yo, I can't save you. I can just empower you to kind of be able to deal with these things and manage these things better on your own. Cause I don't think people should be going to therapy every week. That's not the goal. The goal for me, at least as a clinician, is to help you manage, some of these situations and foster change. And that change may not, we may not be able to change anyone's mind. We may not be able to change circumstances, but you can always change how you, the individual, the client, relate to things. You have that much power. And so just creating that space for people and letting them rock out, man, and giving them the tools that they already kind of have to be successful in their journey.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that as far as the expectations, one as a clinician, but the expectations of people that are in our space. And I find in my experiences that one, people wait until the problem has been too big to manage,
Mm-hmm.
and then they seek out a therapist. And then it's like, hey, I went to a set one session, nothing changed. But
Mm-hmm.
therapy don't work. See, I told you. And it's like, one, you got to give it a little bit of time because we're talking about one behavioral changes, but then there's cognitive changes. How do you see your
Mm-hmm.
perspective? I love how you said that, being able to help you manage and also changing your perspective on the responsibilities that you have, because I find it too often when people show up to the therapy room, it's like, all right, therapist, fix me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, hold up, this isn't magic. It's not how that works. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
also have to have skin in the game. I'll give you all the space and let you rock out, but you also have to put in a little bit of effort. I'm gonna meet you where you are, no doubt
Mm-hmm.
about that. But if I feel like you're working harder than me, we got a problem at that point. And then the other thing that I'm thinking about is, again, going back to being able to cultivate these spaces through connection and
Mm-hmm.
relationships.
Mm-hmm.
We as clinicians may be the only person that person has in their life.
Yeah.
And if we provide them with a good experience, a safe experience, to where they're like, you know what, I can't wait to see Nelson next week. I know I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
go in there, I'm gonna get me some laughs in, he's gonna give me some perspective, I'm gonna be on my way. And like you said earlier, I'm gonna have a battery pack on my back and I'm ready to conquer the
Mm-hmm.
world.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, that's when the real work actually begins, is when you leave my room.
Yeah.
Because this is just, I've said this in previous episodes, it's similar to taking a pain medicine, or we'll say cold medicine. If you got a cold and you start taking medicine on day one, Monday, but then you don't take that medicine for another 6 days, how is this cold medicine supposed to alleviate some of the symptoms that you have?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing when you come to therapy. If we work on this thing for 45 to 50 minutes and then you leave here and don't really tap back in with these assignments or these things that we talked about in session, how is change supposed to happen? So I think
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to highlight that, because sometimes it is almost like, all right, you need to go and sit on somebody's couch and talk to them. That may be what that person needs, and it
Mm-hmm.
may be the most powerful thing that person needs. But to think that a therapist is going to take away all your pain, take away, you know, not getting paid the amount of money that you want, or
Mm-hmm.
this, that, and the other, like, we only can help as much as we can.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is on the client as well. So as I think about that as well, I think it'd be helpful. What should, if I'm a black man, my
Mm-hmm.
30s, I'm looking for a therapist, or I'm a black man, my relationship with my fiance, my girlfriend, whoever, my partner, is not
Mm-hmm.
really going the way I want it to, but I know something needs to change. What should I be looking for in a clinician, so I have the
As
best
far as
outcome?
outcomes,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Outcome. Yeah.
I tell people like therapy is like dating. You're not supposed to like everybody. You're not supposed to have a connection with everybody. And I think that can be the most daunting part of the process, is like having to go out and find somebody, and that first person may not be a fit. So what I tell people, I'm like, hey, people close to you, ask if they can recommend somebody. You know, we Google everything else, so it's like I don't see an issue. We're just kind of going through the internet. We kind of spoke about this earlier with Psychology Today, and like, putting in those keywords for your specific problem and seeing who has the experience. And also, it's like there are very different kind of modalities and approaches to therapy. as far as, is this person MFT? Is this person an LPC? Is this person, master's in social work? Because sometimes those experiences can be a bit different. Obviously, we're biased because we are marriage and family therapists. So that's what I would look for personally. But that's not to say that, somebody from counseling or from social work can't be effective. But I think it's just, just being honest about it, right? Like, you look at anything else, you look at the league, it's like, yeah, they're all stars and they're role players and they're bench. Not everybody, just because they have a license after their name, is a good therapist or the best therapist for you, right? And I think that goes into that life experience. And so oftentimes kind of reaching out and expressing what you're looking for, that is free, whether it's, a quick call or an email. Therapists are usually always looking to fill their books or, put you on a wait list or even refer you. I think that's really cool about, our industry is that, if people know what you do, they're like, hey, you know, I think I think Kendrick will be the best therapist for you. Like a lot of the things that I'm hearing with your background, I think you guys will be able to again have that outcome that they're looking for. But again, it may not happen in the first session. But I just think it's being mindful. It's like any other relationship that you're not going to gel with everybody and you're not supposed to, because if we did, how do we know when it is the right fit? So like anything else with friendships, with dating, it's like that relationship with your therapist is a special one. So it may take some time to find that person, and even when you find that person, it may take some time to develop that therapeutic rapport and that relationship. So just patience. Again, as we talk about self-care, just being mindful that it's like, this is for you, right? It's not an oil change. You know what I mean? It's not, oh, I'm about to go to the grocery store to get some milk. You want to make sure that you're with someone that you feel comfortable, that you feel safe and secure with, who is thoughtfully addressing and trying to understand your context. So I tell people, like, take that process seriously and don't give up. I think, yeah, one, like you said, yeah, one bad experience, like, oh, therapy doesn't work. And I talked to this person, like I had a client where he's like, yeah, she told me to cut everybody off, cut my family off. I'm like, look, I don't know why they said you know what I mean? But there was some repair there, and that's what I did that first session. What have your experiences been with therapy? Right? What are your expectations? Because if you're like, yeah, I want to be able to talk to you today and not be depressed tomorrow, I might shake your hand and be like, well, I'm not able to I can't refer you to anybody that does that. That's not within my wheelhouse. So I wish you the best of luck. And I think, again, just being mindful, like not everything is going to be a good fit, but, really being thoughtful and intentional with your mental health. It may take some time and that's okay. But, I just encourage people, Black men especially, like don't give up. Because, don't give up on yourself. You're worth it. And that therapist is out there. I promise you.
I love that. And it's almost like mental health is mental wealth.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we go to sometimes these extremes to get whatever it is, or we can even think about it from a car standpoint. We go to the mechanic to get our oils changed, the brakes fixed. There's something going on with our car and it's not functioning the way it should, or we're not getting the performance that we need from it. We're going to go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and go to a mechanic. Athletes, if we're going to a trainer, it's like, man, my 3-point shot ain't really clicking like it needs to. All right, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna seek out a trainer because there might be some things that the trainer can see that nobody else is seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to bring it back. Is it a good fit for you? And I
Yeah.
love what you just said is like there's LMFT, so licensed marriage and family therapists, LPCs, licensed professional counselors. You have all these titles and who does what. At the end of the day, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what the title is. It's more
Mm-hmm.
important on how they can connect and relate to you and help you in your journey of mental health. Because what's good for one person may not be good for you. So even if we take into consideration the different modalities, so emotion focused therapy or solutions focused therapy or structural therapy, those modalities might work for one person, but another
Hmm.
person, they just need somebody to listen. And there's no really like, it's just more about the relationship, just being able to come to therapy and just get it off the chest and then leave. It looks different. The other last piece that I want to mention here before we wrap things up, I just appreciate you for one, your journey of getting into this space. I know it wasn't a linear path for you,
Hmm.
but your experiences have followed you and has made you the clinician that you are. The way you speak about things, the power in your voice, and the excitement that you have for our field is encouraging for me, but then everybody else who works with you, because I feel it and I see it in just all of our conversations that we have. You bring something to the table and you are unique and you are valuable to not only the people around you, but the people who come to you for these types of services. And I hope that you continue using your voice within this space, because there are very few men clinicians that look like me
Hmm.
and you in this space.
Hmm.
And that is one of the barriers for us going to therapy is, why do I want to go to somebody that doesn't look like me? That's a question that sometimes comes up. But
Yeah.
if I can go, if I know there's a clinician in my area that look like me and you, I'm like, okay, cool. I think you shared a story a couple of weeks ago. Sometimes it's just like, oh, you look like me. All right, cool. I'm excited for this. No matter how like skilled you are, it's like the connection of like, oh, I know you're in this space. I can trust you. With everything said, what is the highlight that you would want anybody listening or watching into this episode? What do you want them to take away from this conversation?
I think the biggest thing, if you are struggling with some of the things that we mentioned as far as depression, anxiety, or anything else, seek help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We mentioned some of these things of asking people if they're in a place or have the bandwidth or the experience to be helpful in that moment. But prioritize your mental health, prioritize yourself, because it won't just benefit you, but I think it'll benefit everyone around you. And, as we talk about purpose and productivity and things like that, you are far more effective when you feel good. Like when you are of sound mind and body and you are taking care of yourself, you can do far more. And so, in order to honor that, it's like mental health, as you said, mental health is wealth, to the degree that it's like you're able to access that full potential. And, if you are going through hardships and tough times, we're talking about, race and income and all these different things like that, it makes it that much easier to kind of deal with some of these struggles where you're grounded and you're kind of focused and you're like, okay, I'm good. I know what to expect and I got this. But we do ourselves a disservice when we refuse to ask for help and ask for support. So I just encourage anyone who is struggling with their mental health or like your physical health. I think that's a big one for Black men, especially. Go to the doctor. Get your physical. You know what I mean? Go to the dentist, get your teeth clean. Like, you know what I mean? It's okay to take care of ourselves because we are invaluable. And I think your family and your loved ones will thank you for it. So if you need help, whatever that may look like, seek services, seek support. And that's what we're here for. If you guys need access to resources, either of us would be happy to share those, and make sure we can connect you with somebody that can help.
Man, Nelson Graves, I appreciate you joining this conversation and I enjoy you and your insights, but more importantly, I enjoy you as a brother. We've been able to connect and have meaningful conversations just about our own personal journeys, our lives, and then as professionals in the space. So I appreciate the connection that we've built over the last year, and I'm looking forward to this space being blessed with your presence and expertise.
Appreciate you.
So
Thank you, brother.
if you're listening to Coats and Conversation on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, be sure to leave a comment. What was the best part of this episode? If you know of somebody who could take value or gain value from this conversation, please share this with them. In our space, in our community of mental health, there's far too many of us not taking care of our mental well-being and our physical well-being. As Nelson shared, this isn't only effective for us, but all of our relationships around us. We can be that light to other people when we can heal ourselves and fill our cups up to be able to pour in other people's cups. So again, if you found value in this episode, please leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk soon.